The incident. On January 25, 2022, the atmosphere was highly charged following the deaths of NYPD detectives Jason Rivera and Wilbert Mora. Susan Sarandon, a famous actress and activist, ignited controversy with a tweet that many saw as insensitive. The tweet in question was a repost from podcaster Danny Haifong, showing thousands of NYPD officers lining Manhattan's Fifth Avenue to honor their fallen colleague, Detective Rivera. Haifong's caption read, "I'm gonna tell my kids this is what fascism looks like," a statement Sarandon echoed to her vast followers. The timing of her post was especially contentious. It came the night before Detective Mora's funeral. It further intensified the emotions about the NYPD's loss. The original image and text were meant to critique the many police, but endorsement and timing brought her a wave of backlash. It came from many corners, including police and the public. Sarandon's tweet posed a rhetorical question that intensified the debate. So, if all these cops weren't needed for crime that day, doesn't that mean they aren't needed any day? Many saw this comment as a stark dismissal of the role of law enforcement. It questioned their need, and indirectly the value of paying homage to the dead officers. The backlash was swift and fierce. The Police Benevolent Association of the City of New York responded directly to Sarandon's tweet. They accused her of mocking their community's heroes. Their tweet read, "This is what privilege looks like. A wealthy actress, safe in her bubble, mocking heroes and making light of the crisis that cops are battling alongside our communities. NYC is uniting to stop the violence. Susan Sarandon is living on a different planet." The National Fraternal Order of Police also criticized Sarandon. They condemned her remarks' timing as inflammatory and brainless. These responses showed a stark divide in perception between the actress and the police. It underscored the heightened sensitivities around police-community relations. The incident sparked a debate over the comments. It also raised questions about the impact of celebrity statements on public discourse in tough times. The controversy sparked talks on the respect due to police. It also led talks on the role of celebrities in politics and social debates, and on the broader impact of such public statements in times of community grief and unrest. Law enforcement's response. After the controversial tweet, police agencies and associations quickly responded. They were clear and angry. They reflected a wider sense of anger and betrayal in the police community. These reactions showed the tension between public figures' free speech and the respect and support owed to police. This tension is especially felt during periods of mourning. The Police Benevolent Association of the City of New York, PBA, one of the largest municipal police unions in the world, was quick to condemn Sarandon's actions. The PBA's tweet accused her of mocking heroes and trivializing the challenges faced by police officers daily. This statement was emblematic of the union's role. It is advocating for police officers' rights and dignity. This is especially true when they face criticism or public scrutiny. The PBA's response was big. It defended the deceased officer's memory. It was also a counter to the growing sentiment against police practices. This sentiment was amplified by incidents of police brutality and the calls for reform that followed. Moreover, the National Fraternal Order of Police, representing more than 355,000 law enforcement officers, also voiced its disapproval. Their communication labeled Sarandon a D-list actor and criticized her for choosing "the day we bury our fallen brother" to make such inflammatory and brainless comments. This expression of disdain came from the national body. It underscored the unity in the law enforcement community. They saw the attacks as unfair or misrepresentations of their profession. Retired NYPD Detective Angel L. Masonette provided a personal and poignant rebuttal via Twitter, emphasizing the collective commitment of officers who attended the funerals on their own time, many of whom were off-duty. Masonette's tweet showed the number of NYPD officers. It also pointed out the effort in honoring fallen comrades. This framing made Sarandon's comment seem not just misinformed but deeply disrespectful to the police community's sacrifice and unity. There are 35K near NYPD cops in NYC, and this is 3 hours, many off-duty, other agencies, representing over 850K sworn LEOs in this country. Shame on you, a Susan Sarandon, 2 young Dominican cops were killed and you spread anti-police rhetoric. You're a disgusting person, he tweeted. Sal LaBarbera, a retired Los Angeles homicide detective, similarly expressed his dismay, suggesting that Sarandon seriously needs help and cautioning her on the potential personal need for police assistance in the future. This response touched on a common theme in public discourse about respect and support for law enforcement. It's the expectation that those who criticize the police might one day rely on them for help. These law enforcement reactions were not isolated sentiments. They were part of a larger story. In this story, police officers and their allies have called for more respect and understanding of the complexities and dangers in police work. Public and media backlash. The backlash to Susan Sarandon's tweet was swift and expansive, reverberating through the media and among the public across various social media platforms. Following her sharing of Danny Haifong's controversial tweet, which depicted thousands of NYPD officers at the funeral of Officer Jason Rivera and equated the scene to fascism, the reaction highlighted the polarized views on law enforcement and celebrity activism. The media coverage was immediate. Many outlets picked up the story and framed it in the context of national debates. These debates were about police reform and celebrity influence. Newspapers and online news platforms highlighted not only the content of the tweet, but also the public's strong reactions to it, both supportive and critical. On social media, the responses ranged from deeply critical to supportive of Sarandon's right to express her views. One Twitter user commented, "This is one of the most hateful tweets I've ever seen," reflecting a sentiment echoed by many who felt that the comparison was inappropriate and disrespectful, especially during a time of mourning for the police community. Another user sharply criticized Sarandon's perspective on police necessity, writing, "Don't bother calling the police next time you need help. Apparently, you can afford your own private security and don't seem to care about an officer who gave his life trying to save a domestic violence sufferer." This comment highlights the personal stakes and emotional intensity that the tweet stirred among the public. But some users pointed out that many officers at the funeral were off-duty. They were trying to counter the idea that their presence at the event implied neglect of their duties elsewhere. This aspect of the discussion underscored the complexity of public perceptions regarding police work and community obligations. Moreover, the hashtag "Abolish the Police," stamped on Haifong's tweet, as shared by Sarandon, intensified the debate. It aligned her with a more radical stance on police reform. This stance resonated with some progressives, but it alienated and angered moderates and conservatives. The tweet was viral. It sparked wide-ranging discussions about the role of police, the limits of protest, and the duties of public figures in expressing political dissent. The public discourse was further fueled by Sarandon's celebrity status, which gave her opinions a significant platform and influence. Critics argued that her actions could hurt efforts to foster understanding and reform. These reforms are between communities and law enforcement. In contrast, supporters said that her fame could draw attention to needed debates. They are about police practices and systemic reform. Afterward, Sarandon did not immediately respond to requests for comments. This left the public and media to interpret her silence and the implications of her tweet. Political reactions. The political response to Susan Sarandon's controversial tweet added another layer of complexity to the situation. Political figures and candidates were quick to seize the moment. They used her post as a touchstone for broader debates on law enforcement and public safety. This reflected the deeply split nature of current politics. One of the most vocal responses came from Lee Zeldin, a New York Republican gubernatorial candidate, who used the incident to critique what he perceived as Sarandon's disconnect from the realities faced by law enforcement and the general public. Zeldin tweeted, "Congratulations, Susan Sarandon. You're now the poster child of an angry, woke, liberal, pro-criminal, anti-law and order jerk. There are other more fitting titles, but it only gets more vulgar from here." His response was a good example of the sharp and divisive language that fills much of today's politics. This is especially true on contentious topics like police reform and celebrity activism. Zeldin's tweet underscored a common narrative among conservative politicians, who often frame critiques of police practices as attacks on law and order itself. This perspective appeals to constituents who view respect and support for law enforcement as fundamental to societal stability. Zeldin placed Sarandon as a radical opponent of these values. He did not just address the tweet, he also invoked broader fears about liberal policies and policing. Sarandon's tweet had big political effects. It gave a focal point for discussions on the role of celebrities in politics. Critics argued that celebrities like her wield disproportionate influence over public opinion and policy debates due to their platforms. Supporters, however, saw her actions as a valuable contribution to raising awareness and stimulating necessary conversations about police accountability and justice. Furthermore, the incident highlighted the challenges that arise when public figures engage in highly charged political commentary. The intense scrutiny and backlash can overshadow the intended message, complicating efforts to address the underlying issues. In this case, the backlash also hurt how the public sees the broader police reform movement. It shows how star interventions can divide, not enlighten, the public. Context of the tweet. To fully understand the impact of Susan Sarandon's tweet, it's essential to consider the broader context in which it was made. The tweet came during a period of heightened tensions in the United States concerning police practices, following a series of high-profile incidents involving police officers and calls for significant reforms across the nation. The immediate backdrop of the tweet was the tragic death of Officer Jason Rivera, who, along with his partner Wilbert Mora, was fatally shot while responding to a domestic violence call in Harlem. On January 21, 2022, these NYPD officers were responding to a domestic violence call in Harlem, a neighborhood in Manhattan, New York. This call led them to an apartment where a confrontation ensued, resulting in both officers being shot. The officers were called to the scene following a dispute between a mother and her son. Upon arriving and entering the apartment, they were ambushed unexpectedly. The shooter, a 47-year-old man, opened fire with a stolen .45 caliber Glock, fatally wounding Officer Rivera and critically injuring Officer Mora. Officer Rivera succumbed to his injuries that night, while Officer Mora was taken to the hospital in critical condition and tragically passed away a few days later, on January 25, 2022. The deaths of Officers Rivera and Mora deeply affected New York City, highlighting the dangers police officers face daily. Their funerals were held at St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue, attended by thousands of police officers from across the city and even from other states, demonstrating the tight-knit nature of the law enforcement community. The officers' funerals were significant events, covered extensively by the media, and attended by high-profile figures, including New York City's mayor and other public officials. The scene of thousands of officers lining Fifth Avenue in solemn solidarity was a powerful image of mourning and respect for the fallen officers. Danny Haifong, an independent journalist whose original tweet Sarandon shared, used this somber gathering to make a political statement by labeling it as "what fascism looks like," a comment aimed at critiquing what he perceived as militaristic displays by law enforcement. Sarandon amplified this message, which she accompanied by a rhetorical question about the necessity of police on days when crime supposedly does not require their presence. This addition, along with the hashtag #NotAbolishThePolice, tied her tweet directly to the broader movement advocating for significant policing reforms, including defunding or even disbanding police departments. This period also had a big public reckoning on policing in America. It was spurred by the Black Lives Matter movement and greater awareness of racism in police. Sarandon, known for her progressive views and activism, was participating in a larger, ongoing national dialogue about these issues. Her tweet, therefore, was not just a standalone comment, but part of her broader advocacy efforts, which often focus on critiquing established power structures and calling for social justice reforms. The public and political reaction to Sarandon's tweet thus reflects not only opinions on her specific words, but also the volatile and polarized nature of American discourse on law enforcement and social justice. Some saw her tweet as a needed push against what they see as excessive police force and solidarity. Others saw it as a disrespectful attack on people mourning their fallen colleagues. Sarandon over and beyond activism. Born Susan Abigail Tomlin on October 4, 1946 in New York City, she grew up in Edison, New Jersey as the eldest of 9 children. She graduated from the Catholic University of America in 1968 with a degree in drama. Her entry into the entertainment industry began shortly thereafter when she accompanied her then-husband, Chris Sarandon, to a casting call and ended up auditioning herself. This led to her film debut in the 1970 movie Joe, where she played a disaffected teen. Sarandon's breakthrough came with the cult classic The Rocky Horror Picture Show, 1975, where she played Janet Weiss, a role that earned her significant attention and a dedicated fan base. She solidified her status as a leading actress in Hollywood with a string of successful films in the 1980s and 1990s, including Atlantic City, 1980, Thelma and Louise, 1991, and Lorenzo's Oil, 1992. Her performance in Dead Man Walking, 1995, earned her an Academy Award for Best Actress, recognizing her portrayal of Sister Helen Prejean. Susan Sarandon was married to actor Chris Sarandon from 1967 to 1979, though they divorced amicably. She has 3 children, her daughter Eva Amuri, born from her relationship with Italian filmmaker Franco Amuri, and 2 sons, Jack and Miles, with actor Tim Robbins, whom she met while filming Bull Durham, 1988. Sarandon and Robbins were a couple from 1988 until their separation in 2009. Despite the end of her romantic relationships, she has maintained strong ties with her family. She often speaks about the joys and challenges of motherhood, highlighting how her children have influenced her perspectives and priorities. Her family life remains an essential aspect of her identity, grounding her amidst her bustling career and public endeavors. Beyond acting, Sarandon has also ventured into other areas of the entertainment industry. She co-founded the New York ping pong club Spin in 2009, showcasing her entrepreneurial spirit. She has continued to work in film and television into the 2000s and 2010s. Taking on a variety of roles that challenge her and speak to her interests in complex, character-driven narratives. Going back to her tweet, it surely didn't occur in a vacuum. It was deeply rooted in her extensive history of activism, which has frequently intersected with her Hollywood career. Her outspoken nature has shaped much of her public life and has often brought her under intense scrutiny and criticism, similar to the backlash experienced with her controversial tweet regarding the NYPD funerals. Sarandon has been a vocal advocate on a range of issues including human rights, social justice, and environmental causes for decades. Her activism includes support for anti-war demonstrations, LGBTQ+ rights, and more recently, the Black Lives Matter movement. She has consistently used her platform to raise awareness and advocate for change, often participating in protests and public discussions and utilizing social media to reach a broader audience. Her opposition to the Iraq War is a notable example of her willingness to face significant personal risks for her beliefs. In an interview with the British television network ITV, Sarandon revealed the extent of the backlash she faced for her anti-war stance, including receiving death threats. "I don't think that I ever thought someone would ever really kill me," she said, although there were some people who said I'd like someone to knock her off on the radio and stuff like that. She also noted how her family was targeted. "The papers attacked my kids," and described the uniform criticism from every hate radio program. Sarandon's critical view of the U.S. government's policy on Iraq led to her being labeled as a bin Laden lover, a smear tactic used to discredit her and others who questioned the war. They would put my name, and then bin Laden lover. You know, all of these things, she told Jonathan Dimbleby in the interview. Sarandon condemned Democrats for failing to stand up to the Bush administration's Iraq policy, even though she hopes a Democrat will win the White House in 2008. "Everybody is so cautious and just trying to get elected, just trying to stay in office," she said. Asked if she would support Clinton for the presidency because she was a Democrat, Sarandon said the former First Lady lacked principles. "I think she's a politician like everyone else," she said. "So I'm not particularly supportive of her. I'd like to find somebody that really has a moral bottom line, be they a man or a woman." Her activism has occasionally led to a backlash within Hollywood as well. Sarandon mentioned facing isolation and implicit boycotts from certain segments of the industry. "I don't think that I thought that I'd really never work again, but when there is nobody else, when you look out on the field and everybody is quiet and they're all looking away and nobody's saying anything, it's a really scary place to be," she reflected on her experiences. The tweet following the funerals of NYPD officers Rivera and Mora is consistent with Sarandon's historical public positions on policing and systemic reform. The tweet's content and timing show her commitment to provoking thought. They focus on the role of police in society. This is especially true now when debates about policing are intense. Question about the necessity of police presence was likely intended to challenge public perceptions and provoke discussion.